to Adjust Inc. presents If Testimony Was a Person. Today we have a guest who is so multifaceted that I don't even know how to define you because it's
Wow.
gonna take a few things. So, one, you have a career in New York law enforcement, entrepreneur, person in ministry, amongst so many other things. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Tina Booker. I could say Pastor Tina Booker, right?
Yeah.
So you are a Brooklyn native.
Oh, absolutely. I ride for Brooklyn.
That's right. Where
I
were you?
ride for BK.
What part of Brooklyn?
Bedford Stuyvesant.
Bedford Stuyvesant.
Yeah, that's my stumping ground. I live all through Brooklyn, but majority of my life has been in Bedford Stuyvesant.
And your era was Boys and Girls High School, Mr. Mickens.
Mickens was quick story about that.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little snippet of the book. When I went to high school, I actually got accepted to Martin Luther King in the city for performing arts for dance.
Okay.
My mom took me the first day of high school, and she went to the office to see how it worked with programming and stuff. And they said, my mother said, "Who's the principal?" And they were like, "We don't have one. Our principal has just been transferred to Brooklyn to Boys and Girls High School, Mr. Mickens."
Wow.
And so my mother was like, "So you can print up the transfer papers because she will not be going to a high school that does not have a principal."
Oh, wow.
And she transferred me out the same day that my first day of high school.
So Mickens was going to be the
He
principal
was
of
the
King,
principal.
or
He
was
was
the
the
principal
principal
at
at
King.
King.
And then
And
he ended up
he
at
ended
Boys
up
and
at
Girls.
Boys and Girls.
And your mom was like, "That's where you're going."
So I thought that I was like, I'm going to go to the high. I'm from
Yeah,
Bedford Stuyvesant.
yeah.
All my friends are there. And my mom, knowing I grew up, I had a lot of behavioral issues. And so my mom was like, "No, you won't be going to Boys and Girls," because I had zoned in between the high and Prospect Heights High School in Brooklyn. So that where I lived, either one was the
Right.
zone. And my mom knew that my best friend went to Paul Robeson High School, that used to be Alexander Hamilton, across from Albany Projects in Crown Heights. And she knew my best friend went there, and it was a relatively new school since they switched the name. And we walked up to Albany and Bergen, and she walked in the first day, went to the office, and got me in that. I got in that school that day. So I was upset I wasn't going to the high, but really not that upset because I did know some people that went to Robeson, and it was only two the sophomores and the freshmen there. So she preferred me to have a smaller one because I was always into something.
Yeah. I mean, it's, New York City schools are a whole different thing
Different.
now than they were at that time. And so you start out in Brooklyn, you end up at Robeson, and what did you do right after high school?
I went to college. I got accepted. Well, I barely got out of high school. Truthfully speaking, I cut a lot. I cut through most of my junior year and half of my senior year, and I was one of those seniors that was, when I got to school, I went to summer school every single year of high school, and always with a class attached to physical education. Like most kids who don't want to get prepared for gym. So I always went to summer school for physical education and whatever other class I fell throughout the school year. With college, being that funny story is my principal at times used to walk me to class.
To make sure you got yourself there.
Got to class, and I was sharing how important even the school aides, how important everybody in a high school is with children, because that's usually a time parents don't run to open school night as much.
Right.
And I knew both of my parents. First of all, my dad is was much older, and he didn't know the New York school system because he never finished like junior high school. And then my mom, coming from the South as well, she didn't know the school system. So me being like a slickster, I knew how to get like I was telling my mother Delaney cards, all the X's meant the days I was in class.
But by the time your mom got to see the Delaney card, I thought the teacher would be in front of her saying, "No, this means that." No.
I was so spoiled and slick that I would ask my dad to come to open school night in high school. My mother didn't come as much in high school unless she got called to the school. But I knew open school night was coming, and she was that parent that would go in high school. So I would say, no, let my dad come from Jersey and go to open school night with me. And so I knew he would not have a clue. He's not gonna ask questions. And so I remember the time
Real
I told
slickster.
him that. Yeah. So yeah, pretty much. I went to college, and I got in college. My mom was dating a college professor at the time. She was getting her degree. She decided to go back to get her degree while we were in high school, my sister and I. And so she was dating a college professor. And my guidance counselor in high school wasn't that fond of me. And in my end of my 11th grade year, I believe, or top, no, it was top of my 12th grade, she called my mom to the school and was asking my mom to transfer me out to an alternative school. And my mother literally pointed at the stage and was like, that's the stage. If Tina's 40 years old, that's the stage she's going to walk across. She's not transferring out. And she did get other children's parents to transfer them out. So my mom didn't transfer me out. I was always passing summer school. I never failed the RCT test because remember, we didn't have to have Regents diplomas at the
RCTs,
time.
yeah.
Me and my husband was just talking about that. And her boyfriend at the time knew what type of kid I was. When my guidance counselor wouldn't allow me to go on senior trips and let me go to like college fairs and stuff, he had a connection at SUNY Westbury. And so he took me out on the Long Island Railroad and they let me take the test, the placement test.
Wow.
And I actually passed the placement exam and was able to get accepted to SUNY Westbury like at last minute.
I don't think you realize how much history you just gave. So, for those that don't know, Delaney cards were these little cards that teachers used to have, and they would make notations on them about your attendance and behavior, etc.
Yeah.
Then you mentioned RCT exams, which was the Regents competency test to be distinguished from Regents exams that
Right.
kids have to pass 5 of them just to get out of
Just to
high
get
school
out of high
now,
school.
right? And then you mentioned the placement test for
placement
SUNY,
test
which
for
was
college.
yeah. I mean, you brought back a lot of great memories.
Memories, right? So nostalgic moments, right?
Right. So, so you get into Old Westbury.
Yeah, I got into Old Westbury. And the thing for me was every time I thought about college growing up, I watched School Days, Spike Lee's movie School Days, like 1,000 times because I love the fact of sorority and fraternity life. So my thing was go to college so I can pledge. And then I had a friend who was in college in North Carolina. She graduated way before me, and she was just talking about the alphas and the Qs and the deltas. And I was like, I'm going to pledge Delta when I get to college. I'm going to pledge Delta. And when I got to college, unfortunately, my transition from in high school, when I was like problematic, it was life happening very early for me. We being teenagers in the 80s, we were experiencing the crack era as it was happening.
Oh yeah.
And it was like I was experiencing family members becoming drug addicts. I was experiencing guys in my neighborhood starting to sell drugs and have a lot of money. And everything was so influential then. And then being a teenager, first boyfriends, first experiences. So I had a lot of adult issues going on as a teenager.
Yeah.
And so I graduated at 17. And going to Old Westbury by that time, honestly, I had already been tainted with Brooklyn culture and the culture of all of those things. So I really barely got out of high school. Glad to get in college because I went to college. My major was media communication arts because I love the arts. And my dream was to pledge and be the next Oprah Winfrey on radio.
Right.
That was my goals. But life happened. and I became a pretty much a victim as well as just caught up in culture and wasn't focused.
I mean, people during the 80s and early 90s were going to Norfolk,
Yeah.
going to Howard. Famously, there was a case of a girl who came from a nice family who went to Howard and got caught up with a drug dealer
Yep.
and ended up being sentenced to, I believe,
Oh, goodness.
almost 30-something years in
Yes,
jail. Ended up getting out after 24
4
years,
years. Yep.
pardoned by Bill Clinton, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it was Bill Clinton.
Yeah,
My dream was to go to Virginia State.
Ah,
First, I just wanted to go to school in Virginia. I wanted to go to either Virginia Commonwealth or Virginia State. And my guidance counselor, they didn't even ask me about my future dreams, and aspirations. But I've always like had an old soul. So even when she didn't think I would graduate, they put me in that in between almost senior class my first semester. And I kind of got into a situation because I know I had passed my summer classes, and they didn't think I was smart enough to immediately leave that classroom with that teacher and go down and say, let me see my transcript. And I had 1 credit over being a senior. And I was like, change my homeroom class immediately.
Absolutely.
My mom didn't even have to come up for that.
self-advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what it was. They weren't used to me. My principal used to walk me to class because he said I was influential on the school. My guidance counselor told my mom I was a bad influence on the school.
You know, I was just talking to someone else about the fact that people need support, and instead they get condemnation. And, you know, when you need support and you have adults that should be embracing you and helping you get to the next place, but instead they're labeling you, trying to separate you from everyone, it can be very destructive.
Yeah, she told me that on my graduation day, I'll never forget, she came to me and said, oh, congratulations, we did it. And I was like, please don't speak to me because we didn't do anything. You had no hope in me.
Yeah.
We didn't do anything. I did it. I pushed myself. I had 9 classes as a senior in my last senior year.
Wow.
And
yeah.
I was determined to get out of school on time with my friends. And I did that. So I didn't want her to take credit when she didn't believe in me.
Yeah, ain't that something?
Yeah.
When did you end up becoming a correction officer for New York City?
In 1999,
Oh, you started late. Right. I'm thinking this
Right.
was like your early 20s, but it was more like
no, I was 26.
26.
I was 25 when they started investigating me, and I was 26 when I got sworn in on the job. And remember, that's a long stretch because I got out of high school when I was 17. And I was working in health and hospital. I used to do medical billing, and then I went from doing medical billing to becoming a medical secretary, receptionist at Columbia Presbyterian. I worked at a few hospitals, St. Luke's Roosevelt in the city, and I went from there to Columbia University. I worked there in the Department of Oral Surgery, and then I went to Brooklyn Hospital, the last place I worked as a secretary for oncologist surgeon at Brooklyn Hospital when I got the call from corrections. I took the test in 1996, though.
Yeah.
And that was such a huge class. And they called me in 99. They called me in 98. They started investigating me. And I got the job. I got sworn in 99.
Yeah.
And I graduated Academy June. And I retired in 2019. So I did 20.
20 years.
20 and
I
out.
mean, you know, I would say that thinking about the Department of Corrections, it could probably have the effect of just numbing you because it's a tough environment to be in.
Yeah.
But then for you, maybe it inspired you to do some things.
Both. I think my family kept me grounded. I want to say my daughter and my husband.
Yeah.
Because just our family dynamic. My husband is the type of person, like, he's going to, first of all, he's not going to let me come home and treat him like somebody at work, number one. And I think being a mom and how my family is, it kept me connected. And to be honest with you, it is numbing. Like, a lot of things that I could take that probably the average person can't. But I don't want to say corrections did that to me. I was just unpacking some stuff recently, and I realized that I had kind of cut off and was numb to a lot of things from the time I was a teenager. I want to believe that from therapy and personal development, I realized that I emotionally detached from a lot of things from a teenager. So way before the careers that I chose.
Okay.
I've always been compassionate because I was deemed a problematic child, behavioral issues. So being that when people put those stigmas on me, I always had compassion for other young, like I do now, why I love young people so much, because I understand that people don't know the story or the why a child is acting out, or they don't care to ask. They just care to label you.
I was talking to my son recently, and I said, it's like a war, a battle. Where there shouldn't be a battle is a battle. So if you walk into a classroom, the teacher wants to control the classroom. They're not going to let the students control the classroom. Right. I'm going to control the classroom. And so instead of lifting those kids up and embracing them, they're battling with them. And, you know, and that battle will happen throughout your whole life. You know, you go work somewhere. I mean, you're fortunate if you have a boss that is a person that cares about your whole
your
self,
whole being.
right?
Exactly.
Usually it's like, I want this, he wants that, you know, and there's that opposite, that
and
battle.
I'm a disruptor. So
yeah.
Anywhere I've worked and always in school, I understood that when people don't, I want to say, I find that, like you said, with educators, I did my best when my teachers took time with me to try to understand me, and I knew they cared about me. I knew the staff members that cared about me. And so I always performed well with them.
Hands down, that's how it goes.
And that's just how it goes. And people don't realize it's not that difficult with children. They just want to know who cares. And kids pick up on energy.
Absolute.
I don't know why adults think we don't as children pick up on energy. And I found that for me, anybody that supported me or asked me a few questions just about myself, because they will, she's talented, she can dance, you know, she's funny, or those things when I was younger. Nobody ever took the time to get deeply into who I was, though they knew I was different. Like my mother's like, I don't ever remember her. She's always been old. And I will say this, and not to be so dark, because all of these things is what made me who I am. Why I'm so open about my story. And I thank God for my family, like writing my book. Like I always say, I appreciate my husband and my daughter, because I don't regret the life I lived, and it's my story to tell. But for them to love me enough to allow me to prepare to share my life and my story to help other young people heal and understand that you can overcome anything. And one of the things I'll say, when people say, how did I get through 20 years of New York City Department of Corrections? Why did I start with my husband and my daughter, Radical for Kids nonprofit organization? What helped me go into ministry when you introduced me as Pastor Tina Booker? All layers of what I needed to do for myself. Number one, I went into ministry. I never wanted to be a pastor. I never wanted to be a minister. I never wanted to help nobody heal but myself. Coming from party promoting, because I was one of the top party promoters in the early 90s, mid 90s to 2000s.
I kind of skipped that part of your history. So, what year did you get married?
We got married in 2003. We met in 2001. And to be honest with you, we literally met in 1998. I met my husband. We were taking, we both went to get our permit. I mean, our
Driver's
5-hour class,
Oh,
5 hour with that in between.
Mm-hmm.
And he happened to be in the class. I took his test for him. They can't take his license back now, but I saw him and I was like, that guy's kind of cute. But, I just brushed it off and we kicked it. We literally had a conversation. We knew some of the same
Wow.
people in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I was having a ski trip. I was party promoting at the time. And we talked, we kicked it. And I didn't see him anymore. It was a cool day. I didn't see him anymore and really didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
Fast forward 2 years later, my husband has a best friend that played in the NBA at the time. And they had a party. And me and my girlfriends went because we went in the VIP for that particular party.
Of course, you were in the VIP. You're a party promoter. You knew everybody.
Hey, I didn't know this was going to happen that night. And got there. My husband seen a friend of mine that he had hung out with during All-Star Weekend. And he saw me and remembered me.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked one of my partners, that's part of my promotion team, to introduce us again. He knew who I was. I didn't remember. And my friend brought him over. And at first I was going through something then. And I really didn't want to meet anybody, date anybody. I was just in my own funk that day and still went out. And my husband came to me, introduced himself to me. And we talked. And he told me his name was Pumpkin. And I was like, what grown man name is Pumpkin? And come to find out, his birthday is Halloween. He was given that name as a baby. And he was supposed to move to Los Angeles with his friend with the NBA. His life was already planned out to move to LA.
Yeah.
And we got to talking on the phone and started dating. I was early in my career. I hadn't even got off probation yet. I didn't even have 2 years on the job at the time. And so we went out, and long story short, 5 months later we were engaged. Two years later we were married. And we're celebrating 20 years married May 17th of this year.
That's a beautiful story.
22 years together.
That is a beautiful
So
story.
yeah, he was a pivotal part of my growth. Job discipline gave me discipline. So healing, I believe, came through the discipline of the type of work I did. And secondly, the love my husband gave me is allowed me to heal and understand that there is something called true love and there is healthy love after disappointments in love. And lastly, I'll say it came together for me from my backstory and why I'm writing my story, because I'm a survivor and I believe in from trials to triumphs. I believe beauty for ashes. And what ministry did for me was me being able to start my internal healing. I always tell people I am not a victim of the things that happen to me, but I'm victorious in it. And I think everybody should have an opportunity to see the victory in things that have happened in life. Yes, like most women of color, most women, period, or young men, young boys. I just can't say women. Yes, I'm a victim of sexual assault. I'm a victim of that. I'm a victim of domestic violence. See, that's all past. But I'm victorious in you seeing me today, and you're telling me all the things I do now, right? All of these accolades. Every time I look at plaques on my wall, proclamations, and all of those things, they mean nothing to me. The most important thing for me is when I gave my life to Christ. And I always tell people, God didn't need me, I needed him, because I needed something bigger than me to show me what healing looks like. And I knew that God truly exists, number one, when he sent me my husband. And my husband saw me. I didn't see him, but God showed me everything you went through. I was right there. And every time another milestone happens for me, and me being a 50-year-old woman and being able to help young people and use my voice to give voice to people who don't feel like they have the power to speak their truth, that tells me God is real. That tells me that, okay, I was a little girl that somebody took advantage of, right? But I'm in a place, I always tell people now at 50, I'm on this forgiveness tour. I have a forgiveness tour bus,
Oh, wow.
and it's real cute. My tour bus is really nice. So I have this forgiveness tour bus, and it's forgive and release. So I no longer live a life where I just want to forgive people and be over it. I really release myself from whatever pain, whatever damage, whatever they gave me, because it gives me more space internally to free myself and just be in positive mindset where I don't have to, my husband don't have to wake up and be like, who's she today? And my daughter don't have to be like, well, can I talk to my mom about something? Or a family member like, oh, Tina's dismissive. Because as kind as I am to people, sometimes I just shut down. I used to. I would shut down and just trying to figure out who am I and how. So yeah,
You know, you said something very important about finding victory in your experiences that would be considered adversity.
Absolutely.
I think that's very important because there's a lot of people that have experienced. I mean, if you look at almost anyone in our generation,
yeah.
you've either seen some adversity next to you or
yeah.
gone through it directly. And if you're going to be successful, you have to use that and, like you
Make
said,
it power.
make a victory of it.
I'm a firm believer in letting your pain become your power.
Absolutely.
And I think that as an African American woman, our stories are not heard enough, and we're so silenced. And we grew up in a time where I grew up in an era where it was children should be seen and not heard. What happens in this house stays in this house. And, you know, like now we deal with a millennial and Gen Z generation that's like, we need to talk about this. We need to tell our stories. And so I'm an advocate for people in my generation to say, you don't have to be silenced that your uncle or cousin or father or whomever, aunt, whoever abused you. You have a voice to say you should not have shame in that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of women, and I had always been a voice to be open when I minister to women about, listen, you see me now, but yeah, I understand what abuse looks like.
Right.
I felt it. I know it all too well.
This is my preaching moment for just a quick sec, right? The Me Too movement, although run by a black woman, by and large, it came about because the world had sympathy for white women, actresses, women in media, people who had something, who had influence behind them. When they were abused, the world said, we need to address this. But
just like abduction of black girls.
Right. Black women had been dealing with abuse, sexual harassment, all types of things that are unspeakable for years, for generations, since we came to this country. And then it really wasn't spoken of until you had these people of means.
These people with means and financial backings. And that's why I host the Melanin Magic Gala. That's exactly why I do. That's exactly why I host that.
Good tie-in, right. So you can share give
because
voice to...
I want women of color to never feel left behind. I want every woman of color to know she matters. I want her to know that her story, even if she feels like she's never shared it verbally, that we still see her. We still honor her. We understand what it's like, how hard it is to get a career in the color of your skin. You're more qualified. And I'm a dark-skinned woman of color. So I've been called Blackie. I've been called, you so pretty to be dark-skinned, the insult with the compliment at the same time. I understand it all too well. So I want to have, I just always love, I love to bridge gaps, and I love to have conversations like we're having now about, we clearly know how the Me Too movement started, but I'm an advocate of women of color coming together because there's strength in numbers. And if we are going to have the crab in the barrel syndrome as women of color, our voices will never be heard. But if we love on each other, like, sis, I see you. And actually, segue, shameless plug, my sister and I, she's spearheading this, and I'm heavy support in her hosting we put together a conference retreat called God Wants Us Well. It's going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina, September 8th through the 10th. And we're tapping in on wellness, relationship, finances.
A 3-day conference.
Yes.
In Charlotte.
And all about wellness, women's wellness. So we can heal from these things, and we can deal with finances. Okay, what is it that you want to do? How do you build as an entrepreneur? How do you understand credit? How do you understand your physical wellness and why it's important to take care of yourself and eat the right things? So we got young women coming as well as seniors. We want any woman who can get to Charlotte to come and let us love on them and give them resources that they may not think they are privy to.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So
do you have your location yet?
Yes, it's going to be at the Sonesta Hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina. Is like not even 5 minutes from the airport. So we're going to be really pushing for that, and we have some therapists, so we can have professional advice as well as a spiritual side, because I believe God is calling us in a time now to speak about, to bring mental health in with spirituality, because they go hand in hand. I don't want to preach to somebody and laying hands on you and all of these things, but I don't have a resource or resolve for you. And I believe as a pastor, which I call myself the hood pastor, because I'm in the streets. And I think it's important to go back to the places that I was when somebody was praying for me in those moments.
Straight up.
So I think that it's important for us to really push mental health advocacy. And as a Christian, I can speak for my religious belief as a Christian, to bring them both together to bridge that gap so that people not only be spiritually healed, but mentally healed. I think that's important.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned that at one time you didn't think of yourself as compassionate. You wanted to heal yourself.
Yeah.
But apparently you developed some compassion because Radical for Kids, which is your organization, that your mission is to...
Yeah, I've always had compassion. What I unpacked was I didn't have the empathy I thought I had. And what revelation I got from doing my own personal development was, I've always been a compassionate person. I'm that friend as a teenager. If you mess with my friend, or you mess with the kid who don't have the nice clothes and stuff, I'm fighting you.
I can see that in you.
Yeah, I'm that girl.
Right.
I'm that girl. Like, move out the way. I got you. Because I didn't want for anything. My parents though they co-parented, anything I asked for, I got. So I was like that spoiled little black girl, like Tootie from Facts of Life, and a lot of young kids don't know about that show. I mean, from What's Happening, Raj sister D. I was like that bratty kid, right? So I always was an advocate for people that was less fortunate than me, give them my clothes and stuff, or if you picked on them, they became my best friend.
Yeah, I see that in you.
Yeah, so I didn't have empathy, and I feel like I'm just learning. I thought I had empathy, but I didn't. And what I realized from writing, which was therapeutic for me, was the reason why I didn't completely have empathy, because I didn't have it for myself. And because everything I went through, I never took time to really grieve it or really feel sorry for myself in those moments. I just kept pushing, like, you got to do this, you got to do that, because I always felt like I had to be the strong one. And now I did some work last year when I was like, when I turn 50, I want to be free from everything. Yeah. And what I did was like, I want to be emotional. I don't want to be that tough Brooklyn girl anymore. If I want to cry, if a commercial come on, I want to cry. And I prayed for that. I said, God, let me feel. Let me feel empathetically. Let me, I got all the other stuff I can help people with, but I found that in ministry and in counseling, what I was lacking, I'm a person with, God has given me a gift where I can see somebody and what they're going through, but then I can see a resolve for them. Even with business, I'm like, you know what would make sense for you? That's a gift that I have. But what I didn't have was the empathy, like when they're in the moment of the pain, I'm like, you're going to be over that. But you think about this. This is going to help. But I needed to be able to sit in it with them so they can be relieved from it to do what I can see them can, the next level for them.
That's powerful.
And I couldn't do it for myself.
Yeah.
So I could.
So you couldn't extend it to someone else.
You can't preach from a place you've never been, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I always tell people I've never been an empathetic person to myself. So it was hard for me to have empathy for other people. I just had the compassion.
There's a therapist named Yalam who wrote a book that the Gift of Therapy, and he talks about how therapy is, he calls therapy sitting with people, and it really speaks to what you just said, that you really have to, in order to really be empathetic, you have to be able to be with the person in the pain a little bit.
Pain.
Although you may not want to stay there, you have to be able to, you have to have the
give
capacity
them that,
to do
give
it.
them that moment. And I used to wonder why people would call me straight no chaser. Oh, Tina gonna tell it to you straight. She love you. She gonna help you get out of it. Don't tell her something if you don't want to come out of it. And I kept saying, why they say I'm so hard? And I was like, this revelation, like, you don't have empathy.
So I want to hear about Radical for Kids.
Yeah, our baby. I came home and I told my husband, I was like, we need to do something. Working on Rikers Island, I was probably halfway through my career. And I kept working I was blessed to work with almost every type of detainee that was incarcerated or inmate at the time. Females, males, adolescents, adults, every drug addicts, you name it, I worked with them. And not until I worked with the adolescents, those that were transitioning literally out of being in the adolescent facility when Rikers still had adolescents and coming to me, but they were still school age. So I still was responsible with sending them to school every day. And they would do the cutest little things, like make a dove out of a bar soap or paper mache for something for me to hang up on my post. And I was like, yo, they so creative. And then having personal conversations with them. And I had like one of the worst housing areas in the facility that I was in. But by the time I left there, everybody wanted to work there. They're like, you could hear a pin drop. It's so clean in here. And it was because I just used to take the time to pray with them. I'm like, doesn't matter your religious belief. It doesn't matter. If you believe that God will get you out of this situation, and some of y'all gonna go through some time because you know what you did, but at the end of the day, I want you to be truthful with yourself. And just watching their creativity and stuff. And I came home and I told my husband, like, we got to do something that we, as people of color, and these kids are from our communities, we got to be proactive and not reactive. And there's a problem here because we always want to be reactive, and we need to find a way to be proactive, because I don't want to see another one of my neighbors or somebody I grew up with child behind a gate, and when they calling me, it's already too late.
Right.
It's not much I can do in there, but encourage and pretty much make sure they have everything they need and do my job efficiently and effectively. And so when I would see people that get released and come up to me and just show so much love, and I wanted to start something. So what made me say Radical for Kids is because when I was in the 11th grade, a girlfriend of mine who was one of my closest friends, she was a creative like me, because I've always been a dancer, an avid dancer, like street dancing and winning dance contests from little girl. And she invited me to City Kids organization, which is in Manhattan. And I had no clue what City Kids was, but it was a place that a lot of young people go. Malik Yobo used to work there. Just so many creatives would go there on Friday nights. And she kept trying to get me to come there, but I'm wilding in school and everything. And one Friday, she told me, we had a singing group at the time, and she said, why don't you come to City Kids? There's a dancing group that's looking for female dancers.
Okay.
And they were IBM dancers, international body movers, and they became like really big, dancing for Nice and Smooth and different rappers, and just went on to do really great things. And I went and auditioned and was the first female picked to dance with them. And it was City Kids. And City Kids was my away from Brooklyn, Fulton Street, and all of that on Friday nights.
Yeah.
And it was just somewhere to go that was just so creative and positive.
Right,
and now
right.
I'm not sitting there watching the guys sell drugs on the corner. It took me away from the norm.
Right.
And so I was like, let's get a nonprofit organization for kids that's creative who parents can't afford to pay for the things that my husband and I pay for our daughter. We kept her in town, everything with talent, piano, dance, theater. So we wanted to be able to bring a service that would give underprivileged and underserved communities an opportunity for their kids to tap into the arts and be able to mentor them and use that, so we don't have to see them on Rikers Island because they just didn't get an opportunity. So that's what made me start Radical for Kids.
That's a beautiful story. And
Yeah.
just hearing about your own experience,
Yeah.
that you were able to get off of Fulton Street and go somewhere where there was good energy and productive stuff happening.
Yeah, I was one wrong left turn away from being on the other side of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
I was that girl. I dated the drug dealers. I've been around all of that, hung out on the corners with people, and, just down a bad rabbit hole that I never should have had to go. I wasn't a girl that needed somebody to take care of me. It was just the influence of the culture. Like, all my other girlfriends are doing it. All my other friends, I want to be protected. I want to be this. And that doesn't have to be your story.
And you organized it as a 501c3?
501c3. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We became a 501c3 in 2014. Somewhere around
You've been
2014,
around for a
2015.
while, yeah.
Yeah. And been doing a lot of community service. We get the children, we make them partner up with other organizations like Life Camp, NAACP Youth, take them on trips. We do so much, and we kind of get them from middle school through high school. So we have about 7 kids now that's in college, and we got 3 more graduating this year.
That's
3
wonderful.
or 4.
That's wonderful. And give me a little bit about getting into ministry and what you've done.
Yeah. So like I said, I never wanted to preach. I never wanted to do any of that.
Yeah.
I know I needed some self-healing. And because I'm such an extrovert, but I'm introverted when it comes to my personal stuff. So I just needed somewhere to really release most of my pain and stuff. And I started going back to church. I was just telling my husband, like, when I started corrections, I had literally started going back to church off and on. Mm-hmm. And my daughter going to church, and I was telling my sister today, I was like, I went back to church watching my daughter. I was like, we dropping this baby to church with my mom, dropping her at the front door and won't even go inside. And I was like, I need to go inside. And I started going consistently. And then my husband started coming, and we started going consistently. And I was like, this is where I need to be, because this is where I feel free. This is where I feel like I can cry and my tears are being wiped away. And I just feel free in this space. And when I realized how freeing it was for me, and God just told me, honestly, I'm one of those people, God was like, preach or die. Like, I'm sick of you. I need the same people you was leading to hell, throwing those parties, all those ski trips. I need you to tell them that there's something greater than you. There's something greater than that. It's something greater than 2 shots of Hennessy straight. And I was like, I'm really called to do this. Oh my God. And I was like, God, you've been so good to me. Here I am.
Yeah.
And I went from that, went to Ministerial Institute and started ministering, and got elevated to a reverend. And when I left the church where I got ordained at in 2016, people were asking me, because I do a lot of social media stuff, And people was like, "Are you going to have a church? Are you going to start a church and everything?" And people started coming to my house in my garage for me to minister to them on Sundays. And I got installed as from the ministry I created, Full of Faith Christian Center, and I was installed as pastor then. And now I'm more virtual, where I started Faith House Ministries South, and pretty much now I'm I'm a church without walls because I feel
Yeah.
like Jesus walked the streets, and from the Bible I read, and he connected with everybody. So I want to connect like that, evangelizing, whether it's social media, whether it's hitting the streets, community service
Yeah.
resources. So that's really how I got into ministry, and that's really my calling, to minister to people with hope through spirituality, and that's how I'm there, and that's why I'm here.
I have to say, I've seen the garage, and it's a nice setup. You know,
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank
but
you.
you know, being able to use the platforms that you use to get the word out,
Yeah.
it's wonderful because that's the way of the
Evangelizing.
world. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
way of the world now. I mean, if
Yeah, you can't be in four.
Yeah.
Nothing. Listen, these four walls, there's no outdoor speakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, now I have an opportunity from a friend that we have together, Ray DeJean, who's given me an opportunity.
Shout out to Ray DeJean.
Shout out to Laughaholics in 275 Park,
275 Park.
who's given me an opportunity for Sundays for me to minister from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. before the Sunday brunch that we're going to be
beautiful.
hosting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll have
I mean,
a church
you
without
know,
walls.
this is it's Black excellence. It's all of these people, yourself, others, you and Anthony, aka Pumpkin, are a power
Yeah.
couple, and you know, it's all these people coming together to use our the little reach that we have put together with others
Yeah.
becomes more powerful.
I think so. I agree. Totally agree.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Same.
You're always welcome on this platform.
Oh,
if
thank
people
you.
want to reach you, ministry, Radical for Kids, or whichever
okay.
ones you would like to announce, give them your handles. And
Oh, okay. You can reach me. Best place, DM me on Instagram, because that's the thing now with the young people say, hit me on the DM. You could DM me. Follow me on Instagram, Tina Booker _official on Instagram, or you can hit me up on Facebook at Pastor Tina Booker. And also I'm on TikTok. Yeah, I'll do the little TikTok thing. Pastor Tina B. Now I ain't running around dancing and stuff. I don't have time for it. I would like to. But yeah, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Hit us up anywhere and DM me, message me. If you need to send me a message, you can email me at Tina Booker, the number 18 at Gmail. And also, I sell cosmetics. Trulay. TrulayForAll.com. I sell cosmetics. Anything you see on me is my product. So,
it's
yeah.
TRULE.
Yeah, www.trule.com, Trulay.com. Trulay for all women. Truly for every woman. We have something for her.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Tina Booker. Share, subscribe. Help to Adjust Inc. presents If Testimony Was a Person. Peace and love. Peace and love, y'all.